Right now, as you are watching this, Canada's Prime Minister is landing on American soil, not to beg, not to negotiate from a position of weakness, not to ask for mercy from tariffs, but to walk into the heart of New York City and tell American billionaires, CEOs, and capital managers, bring your money to Canada. This is not a diplomatic courtesy visit. This is not a photo opportunity. This is a power move. And if you think you understand what is really happening here, I promise you, by the end of this video, your entire perspective on Canada's global position is going to shift completely. Stay with me, because this story is bigger than most people realize. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button right now and tap the like button, because we cover stories like this every single week, stories that mainstream media buries under political noise, stories that actually affect your money, your country, and your future. Now let's get into it. Prime Minister Mark Carney is on a 2-day visit to New York City, May 27th and 28th, 2026. On the surface, it sounds routine. A head of government visiting the financial capital of the world, meetings with investors, a speech, normal stuff. But nothing about this visit is normal. Nothing about the timing is coincidental. And nothing about Canada's strategy right now is what it was even 12 months ago. Because Canada has changed. Quietly, methodically, and with a precision that the world is only beginning to notice, Canada has been repositioning itself as one of the most powerful economic destinations on the planet. And this New York visit is the moment that repositioning goes fully public. Let's set the scene properly, because context here is everything. For the past year or more, the United States under President Donald Trump has imposed tariff after tariff on Canadian goods. The relationship between Washington and Ottawa has gone through one of its most turbulent periods in modern history. Trump has called Canada a burden. He has suggested, repeatedly, that Canada should become the 51st state of the United States. His trade representative, Jameson Greer, has made it crystal clear that any trade deal with Canada will include tariffs, and that negotiations could extend well beyond the July deadline that everyone has been watching. The CUSMA, the Canada-United States-Mexico Agreement, is heading into its mandatory review in just a matter of weeks, and the entire financial world is holding its breath to see what happens next. In any other era, a Canadian Prime Minister walking into New York right now might look like a leader coming to make concessions, coming to smooth things over, coming to offer something in exchange for relief. But that is not what is happening here. Not even close. Mark Carney is not flying to New York to ask for anything. He is flying to New York to sell something. And what he is selling is a vision of Canada that most Americans, and frankly most Canadians, have not fully grasped yet. Carney will deliver a major address at the Economic Club of New York. This is not a small stage. The Economic Club of New York is one of the most prestigious speaking platforms in the world. Former presidents have spoken there. Federal Reserve chairs have spoken there. The heads of the world's largest corporations have spoken there. When a leader takes that podium, the room is filled with people who move billions of dollars with a single decision. And Carney is going to stand at that podium and make the case that Canada, right now, in this moment, is the single best destination for serious capital investment in the entire G7. And here is the extraordinary thing. He has the numbers to back it up. In the past year alone, Canada has attracted $97 billion in record foreign direct investment. Let that number land for a moment. $97 billion. That is not a projection. That is not a target. That is actual capital that has already flowed into Canada from foreign sources. And it represents the highest level of foreign direct investment Canada has seen in 2 decades. While the trade war with the United States was creating noise and uncertainty, while tariffs were being thrown around and political rhetoric was heating up, investors from around the world were quietly, consistently choosing Canada. And Canada's government has not been sitting still waiting for this to happen by accident. Over the next 5 years, the Canadian government has set a target of mobilizing $1 trillion, $1 trillion, in total investment. This combines public capital, private capital, and institutional investment. To make this happen, the government has put forward approximately $280 billion in capital investments and incentives to support third-party projects. The first tranche of major nation-building projects alone, covering nuclear power, LNG, carbon capture, critical minerals, and new trade corridors, represents $60 billion in investment touching every region of Canada. And that is just the beginning. Now here is something that rarely gets reported in the breathless day-to-day coverage of Canada-U.S. trade tensions. Canada has a AA credit rating. It has the lowest net debt-to-GDP ratio in the entire G7. Its banking system has been ranked number 1 in the G7 for stability. And in May 2026, just days ago, Canada was ranked the world's most attractive market for infrastructure investment by the Global Infrastructure Investor Association. Not the most attractive in North America. Not the most attractive among English-speaking nations. The most attractive in the entire world. So when Carney walks into that room at the Economic Club of New York and starts talking to American CEOs and capital managers, he is not showing up empty-handed. He is showing up with data. He is showing up with a track record. And he is showing up with something even more valuable than both of those things. He is showing up with options. Because Canada is no longer just a trading partner of the United States. Canada has spent the last year building an entirely new network of global economic and defense relationships, and the speed and scope of what has been accomplished is genuinely remarkable. In less than 1 year, Canada has signed 20 new economic and defense partnerships across 4 continents. 4 continents. That means deals and frameworks with partners in Europe, Asia, the Middle East, and South America, all developed and finalized within a 12-month window during which Canada was simultaneously managing the pressure of American tariffs and preparing for a CUSMA review. What are these partnerships? Canada is now a full participant in the European Union's Safe Defence Procurement Programme, a major and symbolically significant integration into European security architecture. Canada has been actively deepening ties with Qatar, creating new energy trade pathways. Discussions and frameworks with China, India, and the ASEAN bloc of Southeast Asian nations have opened new markets for Canadian exports that simply did not exist as viable alternatives a year ago. And in South America, Canada has been engaging seriously with the Mercosur trade bloc, Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay, and Paraguay, a combined market of hundreds of millions of consumers. With 16 free trade agreements already in place covering 51 countries, Canada now has more active trade relationships than at any point in its history. This is the context in which the New York visit must be understood. This is not a country scrambling for relevance. This is a country executing a deliberate, multi-year diversification strategy, and executing it faster and more effectively than most observers thought possible. And underlying all of this is something that Canada has always had, but is only now learning to talk about loudly and confidently. Canada is, in the most literal and practical sense of the word, a resource superpower. The world in 2026 is running on a technology revolution: electric vehicles, battery storage, quantum computing, artificial intelligence, clean energy infrastructure. And all of these technologies require raw materials. Specific, critical raw materials that are not evenly distributed across the planet. Nickel, graphite, tungsten, lithium, cobalt. Rare earth elements. Canada has them. Canada has them in quantities that make it one of the most strategically important nations on Earth for the next 50 years of technological development. When Carney says Canada has what the world wants, this is not marketing language. This is a geological and geopolitical fact. Countries and companies racing to build the clean energy future, the AI infrastructure future, the electrified transportation future, they need what is in Canadian soil, and they are increasingly willing to invest heavily, partner deeply, and pay well to access it. Canada's critical minerals advantage is not a future opportunity. It is a present reality that is already driving billions of dollars in investment decisions by companies in Europe, Asia, and yes, in the United States as well. And then there is the human capital dimension, which often gets overlooked in these conversations. Canada has, by multiple international measures, the most educated workforce in the world. Its artificial intelligence sector, centered in Toronto, Montreal, and Edmonton, is adding jobs at a faster rate than the American AI industry. Canada has a $140 billion quantum computing opportunity developing right now, with world-class research institutions and a growing ecosystem of startups and established tech players who are choosing to build in Canada. These are not soft advantages. These are competitive strengths that translate directly into returns for investors. So let us now zoom back out and look at what Carney's New York speech represents strategically. For decades, Canadian economic strategy was built on a single foundational assumption. Proximity to the United States is Canada's greatest asset, and the relationship with Washington is the relationship that matters most. That assumption shaped trade policy, investment policy, energy policy, and foreign policy for generations. It made sense when the world was organized around that logic, but the world is reorganizing, and Canada has recognized this shift, not with panic, not with anger, not with reactive nationalism, but with clear-eyed strategic calculation. When Carney stands at the Economic Club podium and speaks to American investors, he is sending a message that operates on multiple levels simultaneously. On the surface, he is inviting American capital into Canada, and that is genuine. Canada wants and welcomes American investment. The infrastructure projects, the clean energy build-out, the critical minerals development. There is plenty of room for American capital to participate and profit from what Canada is building. But underneath that invitation is a much more assertive signal. It is a signal that says, Canada is not dependent on American goodwill. Canada is not waiting for Washington to decide what kind of relationship we can have. Canada is building its own economic future, on its own terms, with partners around the world. And if American investors want to be part of that future, they are welcome. But their participation is an opportunity, not a lifeline. This is the posture shift that matters most. For the past year, as tariffs piled up and Trump's rhetoric escalated, there has been a question hanging over Canadian politics and Canadian business. Is Canada too vulnerable? Is the dependence on the American market, which has historically absorbed the vast majority of Canadian exports, an existential weakness that cannot be overcome quickly enough? The CUSMA review looming in July has only sharpened that anxiety, because nobody fully knows what happens if those negotiations break down, extend indefinitely, or result in a deal that permanently embeds tariffs into the Canada-U.S. trade relationship. What Carney's New York visit answers, at least partially, is this. Canada is not arriving at the CUSMA table desperate. Canada is arriving having already spent a year building alternatives, having already signed 20 partnerships on 4 continents, having already attracted $97 billion from foreign investors, having already been ranked the world's top infrastructure investment market. The best negotiations happen from a position of strength, and Canada has spent the last 12 months building that strength as deliberately and as visibly as possible. There is something almost theatrical about the choice of location too. New York City, the financial center of the United States, the home of Wall Street, of private equity, of venture capital, of the institutional investors who manage trillions of dollars. Carney is not making this pitch from Ottawa. He is not making it from a neutral venue in Europe. He is standing on American soil and saying to American money, come north. Come invest in a country with AAA credit, world-class critical minerals, the most educated workforce on earth, political stability, and a government that has just cut taxes to make Canada the most competitive tax environment in the G7. Come invest before everyone else figures out what we already know. It is bold, it is deliberate, and it is a fundamentally different way of being Canadian on the world stage than anything we have seen in recent memory. Now, none of this means the road ahead is smooth. The CUSMA review is genuinely complicated and genuinely consequential. Tariffs have real costs on Canadian businesses, on Canadian workers, on industries that have deep integration with American supply chains that cannot be unwound overnight. The new partnerships with the EU, with Qatar, with Asian countries, with Mercosur, these are frameworks and beginnings, not finished highways. Building out the actual trade infrastructure, the export terminals, the pipelines, the processing facilities, the shipping routes, all of that takes years and billions of dollars that are only beginning to flow. The pivot away from American dependency is a process, not a switch. And there is always political complexity. Inside Canada, there are voices, in the business community, in the conservative opposition, pushing for a quick deal with Washington, arguing that no alternative market can replace the sheer scale and convenience of the American relationship. They are not entirely wrong. The United States is still, and will remain for the foreseeable future, Canada's largest single trading partner. The goal is not to replace America. The goal is to never again be in a position where America's choices are Canada's only options. That is the distinction that matters. Diversification is not rejection, it is resilience. And what Carney is building, piece by piece, partnership by partnership, investment by investment, is resilience. An economy that can absorb shocks. A trade network that does not collapse if one relationship goes bad. A country that sits at the table of global negotiations knowing that it has choices, because it built those choices carefully and deliberately, even while the pressure was on. And today, in New York City, that strategy goes on full display, in front of some of the most powerful financial minds in the world, on a stage that carries weight and sends signals far beyond the room. The message is clear, it is confident, and it is backed by facts that are hard to argue with. Canada is not asking. Canada is offering. Canada is not weak. Canada is ready. And the world, including the American investors in that room today, is paying attention. This is one of those moments in a country's story where the direction shifts, where a new chapter begins, where decisions made in boardrooms and negotiating rooms and on international stages will shape the economic landscape for a generation. And you are watching it happen in real time. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Carney's New York strategy will work? Can Canada actually pull off this trillion-dollar investment vision while simultaneously navigating a difficult CUSMA review? Or is the dependence on the American market too deep to meaningfully diversify in the time frame Canada is working with? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Genuinely, I read every single one, and on a story this big, the conversation in the comments is always worth reading. And if this video gave you a clearer picture of what is really happening between Canada and the United States right now, please share it. Share it with someone who thinks they already know this story, because I promise you, most people are missing the bigger picture. Share it with someone who cares about where Canada is headed. The more people understand this, the better the conversation gets. Hit the like button if you stayed all the way to the end. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who want real analysis on stories that matter. And subscribe if you have not already, because we are going to be tracking every development in the CUSMA review, every new investment announcement, and every move Canada makes on the global stage in the months ahead. This story is far from over. In fact, it is just getting started.